Celebrating Nebraska at your state fair. Ahead on Grow, some of our highlights from our coverage of the 11-day Nebraska State Fair and interviews with newsmakers. Do you think we'll see a vote on TPP yet this year?
We will not, no.
And the week's headlines in agriculture. Get ready to grow. Thanks for joining us. We kick off this State Fair edition of Grow with a visit with some of the newsmakers who've stopped by the fair. We caught up with Senator Ben Sasse. He says this is about hunting down chocolate-covered bacon, but once he gets back to Washington, the budget is a top concern.
The fiscal year for the federal government ends September 30th, and pretty much every year, I think it's 36 of the last 40 years, people get to about a week or two before September 30th, and then they say, oh no, we haven't funded the government yet. And there's always this false choice in Washington between shut the government down and fund everything plus 2%, and there's not the kind of reform of a budget process we need.
We also visited with Senator Deb Fischer on the subject of trade, something that's been pretty negative in the presidential campaign. And when it comes to TPP, she says a vote not likely to happen this year. Do you think we'll see a vote on TPP yet this year?
We will not, no. You know, when we have over $7 billion in exports in ag, that carries our economy and our state. Nebraskans get that. They get it in Omaha and Lincoln. They understand it in Grand Island and Scottsbluff and Valentine. But it's concerning to me the tenor and the tone that we're hearing across the country.
The sad news of the political moment we're at is that national politicians in both parties are becoming more anti-trade, even though trade's good for Nebraska.
Sticking with the subject of trade, Japan's agriculture ministry is once again buying U.S. white wheat. 2.13 million bushels now on their way. Earlier this summer, Japan stopped Western white wheat purchases after the USDA said a small number of wheat plants containing unapproved genetically engineered components that resisted herbicide. That was an isolated incident and has been resolved. The stop is believed to have caused only minor disruptions. Nebraska corn farmers are keeping an eye out for bacterial leaf streak disease. Nebraska Extension confirms there are new cases in the state. According to Extension, it's more prevalent in the southwestern, southeastern, and northern parts of Nebraska. While bacterial leaf streak disease looks similar to gray leaf spots, there's a difference between the two. If you think your crops may be infected, they recommend taking leaves to a local Extension office. And with Roundup-resistant weeds, control is a major issue. Let's learn now more about Liberty Link, and our co-host Marilyn Barnett has more.
A lot of people have probably heard of Liberty Link soybeans. Explain what this is.
So, in the past, we've had Roundup Ready tolerant soybeans, and the weeds have become resistant to glyphosate. So, right. Liberty is another technology out there that's a contact killer that will help clean up soybeans and make them clean again.
So what do you think? What percent of soybeans will be Liberty Link, you think, going into the next season?
That's a good question. You know, 2 weeks ago, if you asked me, I would have said probably 10%.
Yeah.
But talking with growers, we're probably going to see 30 to 50% this coming year.
So they're liking this idea.
Yes.
Yeah,
very
this
much.
is great stuff. So when it comes to weed resistance, huge deal. What are some tips that you have?
Well, so a lot of times guys wait till spring, that's when the year starts, but on weeds we got to start thinking about right after harvest. A lot of times our mare's tail, henbit, those type of weeds start coming up in October. So we want to go out with a fall burn down of a 2,4-D or dicamba type product, come back in the spring, put a residual down, and then try timing our Liberty application to kill the weeds when they're about 6 inches tall, and it should equate to a clean field.
That sounds great. I know a lot of farmers like to hear that. So Bayer, you have your own Liberty Link soybeans.
Yes.
Pronounce the name so that I don't say it wrong.
Credenz.
Credenz.
Yes.
So explain a little bit about that. Is it the same? How does it compare?
So we're just a Liberty Link soybean company, but what makes us unique is a lot of companies do their research outside the state of Nebraska. We have our own facility in Gona, Nebraska on interstate there. So we're able to research varieties are going to work very good in our area, be high yielding in the state, so it gives us a leg up on the competition.
Okay, so this is something, if someone wants to go and look into this, how do they go about doing that?
So what I would do is contact your local CPI agronomist and ask them about credenza, and they can get you lined up with us, or they'll get to sell the seed direct.
This is exciting, don't you think?
I tell you what, Roundup was the last big thing, and now Liberty's going to be the new big thing coming out.
I think so. All right, that's cool to hear. So thank you so much for filling us in.
Science, technology, and agriculture go hand in hand here at the fair. NTV's Andrea Braswell has more.
People touching parts of a cow you wouldn't expect. But Douglas Smith of NCTA says it draws the crowd.
We've got some in small intestine, as well as heart and liver and the tongue.
It's a real hands-on experience. He says hopes grabs people's interest.
With our population growing, we've got to be able to feed the world. And by 2050, we're going to have an additional 2 billion people to feed.
Maggie Pearson is a graphic design major at UNK with no interest in farming, but she says she likes to eat.
I'd never touched anything like that before, so it was interesting. I think it's really important. I don't get a lot of experience in it, but I'm glad that people do it.
But why the intestines?
Looking at how the intestine works and how it functions, we've got to understand how an animal breaks down feed so we can be more feed efficient and get our livestock ready for production.
Smith says there are more than 300 positions in the science agriculture field.
As many jobs as we're going to have in the future or have currently in agriculture that go unfilled, that is a concern that we see daily.
He says they're trying to fill 57,000 jobs annually and hopes state fair recruiting will ease the load for the future.
So in 30 years, we can feed the world without question.
And new this year in the 4-H building, a video wall made up of 12 big screen TVs that's showing live what people are saying about Nebraska 4-H on social media and a behind-the-scenes look at 4-H projects.
Young people put GoPro cameras on, and you can see them doing archery, you see them practicing their agility course on the dog run. All kinds of great things where not only do you see the actual product, but the young person and what they've been learning.
You may be featured on the wall. Just use the hashtag #NE4H.
So what are some other things that we can get for like wool?
They're questions their grandparents would have answered with ease.
What is a baby sheep called?
But kids from towns like Fullerton, Wood River, Ord, and Minden have few connections to the farms that fuel their communities.
Or a lot of students think that their food comes from a grocery store. It actually does come from a producer's farm or producer's ranch.
The state fair calls itself Nebraska's largest classroom.
What do we eat that's made from wheat?
Even teaching through sleight of hand.
We saw a lot of magic tricks at the magic show. And we watched our teacher and our principal shave a goat.
The sheep.
Yeah, shave a goat, same thing.
It illustrates the disconnect between farmers and consumers. And as critical as farmers say that is, they realize their focus, well, usually it's on breaking even in a tough year.
They're probably thinking more about the challenges that we have as far as low prices and production, but we can't lose sight of our long-term profitability and production aspects and the consumers, and teaching about where their food comes from, how we grow it.
Would you like some milk?
So trips to the barns and Raising Nebraska help kids connect the dots before the grocery store.
I'm Joyce, and I'm a dairy farmer from Nebraska here.
There's a family farmer. And with everything that goes on at the fair, you could see how people could forget, but this is a state championship for kids who show livestock. Open class cattle shows wrapped up on Thursday, then it was on to the youth shows, primarily kids involved in 4-H and FFA. Also, some of the cattle breeds represented by young people serving as royalty.
I've been stopped wearing this costume before, and they want to take pictures and they ask me about it, and it's a joy for me because I've been in this breed for my entire life and I want to spread the news about it.
Fair leaders say numbers are up across the board with livestock shows, and everything leads up to Monday with the Parade of Champions and selection of the Grand Champion, the best of the best. Our coverage of the State Fair continues. Up next, a visit with State Ag Director Greg Ibaugh.